Well, welcome to the Hill School, and this is a separate episode from our previous series. If you haven't watched that series, go and watch that. It is an excellent series in Scranton and Wilkes-Barre. Today we are here at the Hill School, which is slightly different than what we typically do. We are inside of the chapel at the school. Next to me is Bill Conrad. He's the organist. Bill, thanks so much for having us here today.
You're welcome.
So tell us a little bit about you as an organist, like what inspired you to become an organist and play here?
Well, what inspired me to become an organist, I had no hand in that. My parents thought of that. They got me started on this journey, and when I was about 9 or 10, and it took off from there. How I ended up here is a long story, but the important part is that I'm here and we're having a good time with it.
Now, did you start learning the organ right away, or did you start with the piano and then eventually just kind of morph into the organ at some point?
They started me on a small spinet electronic organ.
Okay.
So I did things totally backwards.
Okay.
You should always start with piano and move on to organ after that.
Yes.
But, it worked. I took to it, and I caught up with piano later on.
And definitely the music, it shows that you definitely caught on real easily because
for some reason, organ is easy for me.
Yeah.
Piano takes a lot of work. Organ comes very naturally.
Which is interesting because pianists, we've met pianists that are really, really good at the piano and can either be extremely good at the organ or so-so with the organ. So I think starting with the organ, I think for you, kind of helped a little bit for you.
It seemed to be the right way.
Yeah. So for this organ, what is your favorite piece to play on this organ and why?
You know, it's strange. I don't think I have a favorite piece to play on any of the organs I get to play on. There are some that sound much better, I think. The Amazing Grace is one that comes off very well here. The acoustics here are marvelous, I think, for organ music, and this organ does a good job with filling the room when you ask it to.
Yeah.
So pretty much the piece that I like and is my favorite is the one I'm working on at the time. Not a good answer, but...
Yeah. Well, and I think, even for that specific song, there's a wonderful recording of that from the Rifati organ in Florida, which I think this really did a good job with that song, because that literally just made me think, oh, that video, that specific video. So I think that this covered that song extremely well.
I'm glad.
So, yeah. All right. So and what do you enjoy the most about playing the organ?
I think what I enjoy the most is the variety of sounds that are available, from very loud to very soft, and the emotions you can evoke from using those sounds with certain compositions.
Which I think is nice because this one is a 3-manual with a pedal board, so you have that option. I think especially if you have a choir sing here, you have the capabilities to be able to play well with this organ and the choir at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I would assume, obviously, with the acoustics of the organ in this room, I think mixing both choir and the organ here, I think would probably be extremely good.
It works very well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, obviously, with the remodel of this chapel, has it probably been better acoustics-wise, or has it gotten a lot better with that, or about the same?
I'd say it's about the same. Empty.
Okay.
When it's full, which it does happen, it gets to be a little bit more dead. Yeah. Just because of all the people in here.
All the people in here. And then the last question for you: what advice would you give to someone that's young or is possibly learning to play the organ, possibly for either here or just anywhere in general?
I think the big thing, learning from experience, is to really start with piano and work your way through that, and then move into organ. And no matter what you're doing with piano or organ, seek out a good teacher, somebody who has a good reputation, somebody you can work with.
Are you at the moment teaching anybody, or are you just solely here to just accompany for chapels?
Yeah, I don't have students right now anywhere. I just play for the chapel services here and play any special services that come up.
Have you done lessons in the past for people? Okay.
I have. Yeah, we've had an organ scholar program here that is not in existence right now, but we did that at one point.
Has it been rewarding for you to teach the organ to students?
Yes. It's interesting to see how different students approach the organ in different ways. So, yes.
Yeah. And do most of the students here enjoy playing this organ, like what it has to offer?
I think so, yeah. What draws students to it initially, a lot of the times, are the different sounds. Being able to play on 3 manuals and a pedal instead of just a single keyboard.
Right.
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Alrighty, so we're inside Austin Wind Chest.
Yes. This is kind of the heart of the organ. Everything, all the pipes are above us here. All the machinery that makes everything work is above us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for the audience, this is kind of like a smaller version of the swell box that we saw at the St. Matthew's organ in Hanover, Pennsylvania, the 247 rank organ. It's probably about half the size of that, but this controls almost the entire organ here. So
basically.
Yep. So we have the trackers above us. We have everything here. And I guess how often, because you guys said you guys use Emery Brothers, is that correct?
That's correct.
For tuning and stuff. So do you guys have like a set schedule for them? Do they come maybe like once a year
tunings are generally twice a year.
Okay.
Once before our candlelight service at Christmas, and again before baccalaureate at the end of May.
Gotcha. Yeah. Have they expressed any interest, or as in like how easy it is to tune this? Have they said anything pretty straightforward for this for the most part?
It's pretty straightforward
Okay.
because of the work that they did while this was out. They made some repairs on pipes, so that makes that job easier. They replaced some tuning slides and tuning slots.
Now, I've noticed the big thing in the room is this. So I'm assuming this is where the air comes in from the blower. Is that correct?
Yes, this regulates what comes up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then this hole here, I guess, is goes out, or is that also
that feeds the grate division?
Okay, so it goes from here directly out. Okay,
Yeah.
so the blower's right below us.
That's right.
Okay, very nice. So, all right, and then also, I guess behind me here, I guess it's almost the same deal. I guess does that feed somewhere else as well?
The feed for the pedal reeds.
Okay, gotcha. Which are on the back wall over here, correct?
That's correct.
Gotcha. All right. So what are we looking at here, Bill? So we had, you mentioned that we have the airflow to the pedal pipes back here, correct?
Yes. Actually, this duct is feeding the cornopian, the big reed. This is the pedal mixture here. This woodwork covers the duct that goes up into the grate.
And that was the hole that was out in here, correct?
That's right.
Gotcha.
That's right.
Very nice. So now I guess in regards, so this organ was built completely. So it wasn't like they didn't add an extra division or anything. It was built when it was built. It was added. Everything was put together
correct.
once.
When it was built in '65, it was a 3-manual instrument.
Okay.
When it was rebuilt by Austin in 2010, it stayed basically the same. Yeah.
Did they add like extra ranks or?
No, they really took everything and used it. Revoiced some of it.
Okay.
They did replace some of them. They added a few things that we didn't have before, like a Walker 32-foot.
Yeah, I was good about to ask you if they added digital. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's Walker.
Walker 32-foot for the reed and the Borden,
Okay.
as well as the diapason.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we took a tour of the Walker company a little while back in February, and yeah, it's been interesting to see choices of digital stops and sounds, but I think Walker, at least in this area, is extremely popular.
Yep.
So I think that was a good choice from the Austin company in regards to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, now we are at the front of the chapel here at the Hill School. Next to me is Lou Jeffries. He is the historian for the school. And can you give us a little rundown about the school as well as the history behind the chapel?
Well, the school was founded in 1851, May 1st to be exact, which sounds like an unusual time to start a school year, but things were different in those days. They had 2 5-month terms in those early years, like May, June, July, August, September, then a month off, and then November through the following year. And Matthew Meggs, who had been a kind of itinerant educator and minister, I believe he was a Presbyterian minister, had a number of different venues where he lived between about 1838 and 1850. He ended up in Newark, Delaware, as the president of Delaware College, but he only stayed there about a year. And then he came up here. Now, what brought him to Pottstown as opposed to some other place? He may have come up here to visit a friend who had a young women's boarding school here in Pottstown on High Street, across from where the Hill School is now. He may have come up to see him, or he may have come up for other reasons. But he spotted the Hobart Mansion, which is located right up here, and he decided to buy that. I was asked where he got his money from, and I'm not sure how much money he had, given the fact that some of the school had money problems in the years down the road. But anyway, he ran the school off and on for the first 25 years of the school, from 1851 to 1876. He brought in one person to be a partner with him, but it didn't last very long. And then he became the consul to Piraeus, Greece in 1868. There was absolutely no way that he could have had anything to do with the school practically in those days. There was no telephones, mail took weeks and so on. And there were two people that that were really the head of the school or rented the school from him during that period. There was a Lutheran minister named Miller, George F. Miller, I believe, who ran the school for a couple of years from 1868 to 1870. And then Matthew Megg's older son, maybe oldest, I don't know, oldest son, George Meggs, ran the school from about 1872 to 1876, when he became impaired, either because his wife became ill, or he did, or he had a heart attack, or whatever, but he could no longer run the school. And that's when they had the crisis period in 1876, bicentennial year, where Matthew Megg's wife told John Meggs, who was studying to be a college professor at Lafayette College in eastern Pennsylvania. He was going to be a professor there. Yeah, I think he already was really. That if he did not come back and take over the school would probably close. So he did, like the dutiful son. He did. And he was not even 24 years old at the time. So, he was kind of a Wunderkind, a boy wonder, so to speak. And anyway, so he took over the school in 1876, and the school had no real direction under Matthew Meggs. It was not the traditional college-bound place under him. The curriculum was what the customer made it, because they weren't in a position under Matthew Meggs, with what little they had to offer, to demand certain things of students. They had to sort of meet their demands. John Meggs, almost from the very beginning, decided, and his father still owned the school for the first 8 years, that John Meggs was the head of school, so there's not a whole lot he could do anyway. And they only had about 50 students. And so he did, there is a picture that was taken in 1877 of the 4 graduates of the Hill School in 1877, which was the end of the first year that John Meggs was the headmaster. And I did some research on those people, and 2 of the 4 went to Ivy League schools, which means that, from the very beginning, he was sending 50% of his class, of his graduates, to Yale or Princeton, which were the 2 preferred places, much more than Harvard. So it was 1884 that he gained ownership of the school from his father, John Meggs. And that's when he started building things. He built the new wing off of the addition that his father had built onto the Hobart Mansion. And in that building, there was a schoolroom on the second floor, and a kind of small gymnasium on the first floor, and a swimming pool in the basement. I have some photographs of those things. And then that became, in the 1890s, he built the middle school building, which was the large building on the south side of the quadrangle here. He built that. Actually, it was attached to that new wing that he had built earlier. And that became both on the first floor, a kind of administrative building, the administrative quarters, and the second and third floor were dormitories. It was in 1902. Well, actually, I back up and start something else. In 1894, a group of graduates of the school, alumni, and there weren't all that many in those days, they decided to start the Hill School Alumni Association, which would meet once a year, just sort of like the reunion weekend in June here. It usually met in February of each year. And it was designed to bring the alumni together for the purpose of fundraising and doing projects and supporting the school. And I backed up and said this because without the Alumni Association, I don't think you could have had this building built, at least by the way it was, which is by the alumni. That's why it's called Alumni Chapel. The alumni raised the $30,000 to build Alumni Chapel. And that came out of that Hill School Alumni Association. So now we get to 1902, June, like it's June 17th or something, of 1902, which is when the laying of the cornerstone was, which is probably somewhere right around here. There's a picture that we have of it, and there's a display case on the in the Student Center that has some of those photographs in it as well. So they laid the cornerstone. John Meggs is in the picture, and there's a group of people gathered around, like a sort of like a teepee or something, where they're going to lay the cornerstone. And that's when they started building the building in the summer of 1902. And it was completed just about by December of 1903, and it was dedicated on Sunday, February 20th, 1904. And and there's a program I have in that display case of that dedication ceremony. One of the hymns they sang was the Church's One Foundation, which was played as the overture when they rededicated this chapel about 2 or 3 weeks ago. That's a sort of brief overview of the building of the chapel.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I appreciate for you continuing to learn more about the school, obviously continuing to keep records of the history of the school as the school continues, and just, you know, obviously with the new parts to the building and additions, obviously this now will go down in the history books of the Hill School.
Okay.
Right, next to me is Harry Whaley. He is a student at the school. So how long have you been attending this school?
So I have been here since my third form or freshman year, so I've been here, this is my 4th year.
Okay, all right. So obviously you've been here for 4 years, so you've had a chance to be inside of the chapel for services and whatnot. So what is your thoughts on the organ at the chapel playing for services and call to worships and such?
I think that the organ is, I think it's a really integral part of our twice weekly services. At about the start of every service, well, at the start and right after the start of every service, we start with a prelude, and then we sing a hymn, and the organ is really the central part of that. I think it adds a lot of depth and richness to our services. I especially realized that this year because we spent last year in our auditorium when we were renovating the chapel. Mm-hmm. And I know coming back, a lot of students, and especially myself, I was very moved to be back in here with the organ and to hear it again. Yeah.
So I guess in a sense, the auditorium is good, but you prefer the more sacred space of here inside the chapel and just more of a more familiar surrounding for services for you and the rest of the students here. Because I think, especially for you and the rest of the students, you guys get an opportunity to hear the organ for services. There's not many churches or even schools in general that have or can boast and say they have a pipe organ directly either on campus or at their chapel. Not many can say that. So I think definitely for the school, I think this is a huge thing. I think to kind of really spark an interest in the organ, because it leaves, when you guys eventually graduate and leave, it kind of leaves a little bit of a lingering spark in you guys to consider possibly even music, even possibly as a further career. But not even just that, just even listening to something as sacred as the organ, as big as the organ, I think really impacts a person's life for sure. So anyway, I thank you for joining us on the program and coming out and speaking with us about this.
Thank you. Yeah.